Hey guys, so I wanted to go through an automation that I built that actually really helps my software consulting business. Um, I spend a ton of time on calls with clients and then trying to translate their ideas into a technical implementation, then articulating that to developers, and then going from there to a planning session where I typically create cards or something of that nature on a Kanban board, and then moving the cards, throughout the board, and it is a pretty laborious process. So I built out a workflow that I think really helps speed up that process. So I figured we would go through that, and then I'll show you how to actually implement it yourself. So the workflow starts with this trigger that looks in a folder for a file to be created. And these files are just simple transcripts from really any AI note taker. I use Fathom because it actually records videos as well. I'll just go to that real quick. Let's see, Fathom. And then to set this up is pretty straightforward. Now I'm using Zapier to just send these transcripts to my Google Drive, and then I just take those transcripts and pull them into N8N through the Google Drive node. But you're welcome to use really any sort of automation orchestration layer for this. So I'll just show you the Zapier integration in case you want to duplicate what I have. Let's go to Zapier. And it's really simple, it's just two nodes here. So it takes that transcript from Fathom. This is my account authenticated there. It takes a transcript from Fathom. So anytime I have a new meeting, and then it just creates a file in my Google Drive from the text. I just kind of dump in all the metadata that I think is important. So the meeting title, the invitee names, emails, and then just like the transcript itself in plain text. And then if I go to my drive, you'll see I created a new folder called Fathom Notetaker YT. So it should just dump the transcripts in this folder. And then when the transcripts are uploaded, the workflow will pick them up because a file was created in that folder, and then it'll run. One thing I like to do, and you don't have to do this, but I like to, with some of these workflows, it becomes difficult to keep track of the setup functions and links and things. So I typically have like a setup document, and all this node does is ignores that setup document where I might have some instructions for how the workflow operates. So once it fetches the transcript, it's just going to fetch the text from that transcript, and then it's going to pass it to Gemini 2.5 Flash to summarize the transcript. And I just gave it a really simple prompt here. One thing that I've been playing with is you can actually, prompt engineering, so to speak, is sort of dead in that you can now just prompt AI models such as Gemini or whatever, anything that really has access to the internet, and you can just ask it to research the best practices and then spit out some prompts that tries to accomplish some task. It's usually that's usually sufficient enough for everything that I've had to do. So that's kind of what I did here. It just says you are a sprint scribe, whatever I gave it this name, a concise meeting assistant, read the transcript and summarize only the relevant project related discussion, omit any small talk, personal chat, or not by content. This is sort of a risky maneuver because you could potentially parse out some important tasks. But what I like to do in these meetings is I actually like to tell the AI note taker what tasks it should be creating specifically. So if me and a client are talking back and forth about like ideating about some feature request, then I'll say, hey, note taker, jot down the previous conversation as a task. I try to be very particular about saying that I want that to be a task. You don't have to do that. You could probably just, if you don't want it to be obvious that you have a note taker who's creating tasks in this way, or you just don't want to like interject and break up the flow of conversation, you probably don't need to do that. You could even experiment with kind of removing some of these pieces of the prompt. But for myself, usually the summarizer and the way that I have it configured creates more tasks than less, and I just kind of trim back the ones that I don't need. So once the transcript is summarized, it passes it to this agent. I'm using that term loosely here, but it passes it to this agent who is a project classifier. And this step, it takes that summary and then just tries to determine which project the conversation was about. Now this is just, you don't have to do any of this, I suppose, but this was like a need for myself, who am juggling quite a few projects at the same time, and I don't want to have to, every time I have a meeting, specify the name or specify the actual project name or anything like that. I want the AI to infer, based on all the projects that we have, what the meeting was, or which project the meeting was about. And I can show you. So this agent is actually hooked up to this project sheet, and actually I need to switch this to current projects YT for this video, right there. Then we can actually go back to my drive, and then if you see here, I actually have no projects in here currently, but I can just add one in, and I'll show you how I do that. So I duplicated a different project that I had, and it's for a client. It's for a meal prepping company called Cast Iron Kitchen. So there's a couple of columns here. I try to keep this as simple as possible. But so I just have the name of the project, then some of the members. It's really anyone who's going to be in the meeting. And the idea here is to just give the model just a little bit more context, such that it knows about the business, it knows who the clients are, it knows who the developers are, and it's able to more easily create Trello tasks with some of that information in mind. And then I took the scope of work actually from the initial proposal, and I just popped that into ChatGPT and said, hey, give me a JSON document that briefly explains the scope of work, some stuff that was promised, who's working on the project, etc. So let's take this overview and pop it into here. Okay, and then this part's a little more difficult. So you actually need to, and as far as I'm aware, there's actually no easy way to do this besides what I'm about to show you, but you actually need the Trello board ID and the list ID that you want the tasks to appear in, and I couldn't find these identifiers anywhere on the Trello website in the board itself. So what I did was I wrote a nifty little tool. Let's go, this is a different project there. Let's see, so I want to go to, I believe my GitHub has the Trello dev tools there, and then, okay, it's cool, so I already have Python main py, so I have something called create cards there. So you can actually add readme. So if you read this readme, you'll see how to actually use this CLI, and it's pretty straightforward, and I'll provide the link in the description to this GitHub. So firstly, you have to do the boards command. This will get all the IDs of the boards you have, and then some of these are just old projects and things. But so you see Cast Iron Kitchen's right here. Okay, so now they have that ID. You could do like Python main py lists and then pass in the list ID, and then it'll give you the IDs of the list. And if you see, so I have to do, claim slash doing, ready for review, deploy slash published. And I actually like to have one more, but let's go to that. Trello. Okay, this is a different project. Cast Iron Kitchen. Okay, right here. So you see to do, claim slash doing, ready for review, deploy slash published. Okay, cool. Then typically I like to have one more archived. All right. Anyway, so let's go back to N8N. Sweet. And then, so once you have those IDs, you can just copy and paste them. So from here, so again, this is the board ID, go in here, board ID, oh, and then the list ID is to do. Like that. Cool. So now this is set up, and we can go back to the N8N. All right, so once this agent determines or classifies the meeting as one of these projects, it'll just parse this request, and then I have a switch here. If you notice, if no strong match exists, it returns unknown. So in this switch, I say, hey, if it's not equal to unknown, then you proceed. Then it's just going to get the relevant project metadata from that sheet. So we're getting, again, current project YT, okay. And then, so this agent's going to read the transcript and then draft us some cards. I'm just going to gloss through this. Again, it's hooked up to the same current project YT. Again, what I'm doing here is I created new documents for this, strictly for this video. So once it takes those cards, it's going to parse the result and then finally upload it to Trello. And it's actually getting that list ID from the current projects, which are right here, actually, current projects. Okay, cool. Now I can save this and activate it. And now everything should be set up, and we can actually create a Google Meet. Just create a meeting. Okay, so now the Fathom notaker is joined, and we can actually go about having the consultation meeting or the planning meeting or whatever. So let's try giving the note taker just a few tasks to draft for us. So the first task is going to be to build out a voice agent that allows for inbound callers to place an order for pickup. And a secondary task might be deploy the new website landing page with the updated menu. And a third task could be to route the DNS to the new deployed landing page. So let's end this call. Cool. Should have a new call in here, which we do. Okay. And if we go to history, okay, we just have it run. 56, perfect. And we go here, make sure. Yep, there's the transcript. Okay. So anytime now, there it goes. So now it's executed and running. And it succeeded in about 16 seconds. If we go to Trello, we'll see there are our cards. So it looks like something happened where it actually ran twice. Let's take a look and try to debug that. Oh, okay. It ran twice because my production card writer also ran. You see there. Yep, deploy website. Okay. Cool. That's okay. So we go back into Trello, and then what we can just do is press C on these three, and now we have some cards to track. All right, I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions setting it up, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.